Nathan pressed play at 3:12 in the morning. He had been sitting on the edge of his bed for 47 minutes with his thumb hovering over the screen, telling himself he wasn't ready, telling himself he would do it tomorrow, telling himself 100 careful rational lies the way he always had. Then something shifted in the silence of his apartment, a stillness that felt less like quiet and more like held breath. And his thumb came down before he decided to let it, static. Then her voice. Nathan, baby. If you're listening to this, it means I didn't scare you off, which means you're exactly as stubborn as I always said you were. He laughed. It came out wrong, half a laugh, half something that had been living behind his ribs for 3 weeks waiting to escape. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth and kept listening. I need you to go to the house, not the reunion house. Our house, your grandmother's old place on Birch Road, the one we sold after she passed. I know you haven't been back. I know. But you have to go, Nathan. What I left for you is in the cellar, behind the loose brick on the east wall, 3rd row from the bottom. You'll know it when you find it. A pause. The kind of pause where a person is choosing exactly the right words. This thing, it's old, baby. Older than the house, older than the family. It collects grief the way rust collects on iron. It found your grandmother first, then me. It feeds on the ones who carry loss quietly and never let it out. Nathan listened to the voicemail 4 more times before he got in the car. He drove 2 hours north to a town he hadn't visited in 11 years, to a street he'd deliberately avoided on every map his memory had tried to draw, to a house that had been sold and resold and currently sat empty with a foreclosure notice in the front window. He did not call ahead. He did not tell anyone where he was going. He parked at the curb in the gray pre-dawn and sat looking at the house for a long time. It looked smaller than he remembered, older. The oak tree in the front yard had grown enormous, its roots buckling the front path, its branches reaching over the roof the way arms reach over something they are trying to protect, or something they are trying to hold down. The front door was unlocked. It should not have been unlocked. Inside, the house smelled of cold and cedar, and something beneath both of those things. Something older and darker that Nathan felt in the back of his throat before his brain had time to name it. Every room was empty, every surface bare. But someone had been here recently enough that the dust on the kitchen floor had been disturbed. Footprints crossing from the back door to the cellar stairs and stopping there. Small footprints, the size of a woman's shoe. Nathan stood at the top of the cellar stairs and gripped the railing and said her name quietly into the dark below. Mom. Nothing answered. But the cold coming up from the cellar shifted, moved almost, the way air moves when something in it turns toward you. He went down. The east wall was exactly where it had always been. The 3rd row of bricks from the bottom, 2nd brick from the left, was slightly proud of the others. Pushed forward 1/4 of an inch, the mortar around it crumbled at the edges. He worked it loose with his fingers, the brick scraping against its neighbors, the sound too loud in the silence. Behind it was a small tin box, old. Painted blue once, the paint worn to silver at every corner. His grandmother's name was scratched into the lid in handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a letter, and beneath the letter, a photograph. The photograph showed his mother at perhaps 30 years old standing at the edge of a tree line. The same tree line Nathan understood with a cold and sudden certainty that he had seen her standing at on the security footage. But in this photograph she was smiling. She was not afraid. In her hands she held a small bundle of something, dried flowers and what looked like cord bound together, and she was holding it toward the tree line the way a person holds a torch toward darkness, not running, not retreating. Offering. He opened the letter. Nathan. If you found this, then I got through to you. I wasn't sure I could. The thing makes it hard to reach across. It took everything I had just to hold the line long enough to call. What you're holding in the photograph is called a binding. Your grandmother made the first one. I made the second. It doesn't destroy what's in those woods, so nothing does that, but it holds it. Keeps it rooted, keeps it from following the family further. The binding breaks when the person who made it dies. That's what happened when I passed. That's why it started moving again. That's why it found the reunion. That's why it tried to use Marcus to get to you. You have to make the third one, baby. I left what you need in the box: dried rosemary from the garden, red cord from my sewing kit, a photograph of someone you have loved and lost. It has to be someone you've grieved honestly. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. The binding only holds if the grief in it is real. You always held yours in, Nathan. Your whole life. I know why. I know it felt safer. But it made you easy to find, sweetheart. It made you a door the thing could knock on, grieve me, then make the binding. Then go to the tree line. You'll know when you're close enough. And let me go. I love you more than you've ever let yourself believe. Mom Nathan sat on the cold cellar floor for a long time. Then he cried. Not the careful, controlled grief he had been carrying since the Tuesday she died. Not the functional kind that made beds and signed documents and drove home by Sunday. The real kind. The kind that had no dignity and asked for none. The kind that came from the place in him that was still 8 years old and still needed her, and had never once admitted it out loud to anyone, including himself. He cried until there was nothing left to hold back. Then he dried his face with the back of his wrist. And he opened the tin box and took out the rosemary and the red cord and the small square photograph at the bottom. His mother at 40, laughing at something off camera, the picture he had carried in his wallet for 9 years and never once talked about. He drove to Kentucky in the dark and arrived at the old property at dawn. He did not go to the house. He went straight to the back of the property, across the dew-heavy grass, to the edge of the tree line where he had last seen her standing in the security footage. The trees were silent. The shadows between the trunks were very deep. Something in the darkness recognized him. He felt it the way you feel a room full of people go quiet when you walk in. I know you're in there, Nathan said. His voice was steady. He was surprised by how steady it was. And I know what you feed on. I've been carrying it around for you my whole life without knowing. That's done now. He held the binding up toward the tree line, rosemary and cord, and his mother's photograph, the real grief bound into it, still warm from his hands. The darkness between the trunks moved, contracted, pulled back the way a hand pulls back from something hot. And then, at the very edge of the tree line, for just a moment, barely there, he saw her. Not the figure from the security footage, not the frightened voice from the phone call, his mother. Standing easy, shoulders relaxed, wearing the blue dress in the morning light like she had simply decided to. She was looking directly at him for the first time since she died, and she was smiling. The real one. The one he recognized. The one that meant I told you so, and I love you in the same breath. She lifted one hand. Not a wave. Just a release. Then the light shifted, and she was gone, and the tree line was just a tree line, and the birds started singing the way birds sing, when something that had been pressing down on the morning has finally lifted. Nathan stood at the edge of the property for a long time. He wasn't sure he believed in anything yet, but he was sure of one thing. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was free. He drove home to Columbus. He made coffee. He let the mug sit on the counter without touching it for a while, just looking at it, just existing in the quiet of a morning that felt, for the first time in a very long time, like it actually belonged to him. His phone was silent. It stayed silent. And somewhere in the part of him that had carried grief like armor for 38 years, Nathan Reeves finally, slowly, let the weight down. If this story moved you, you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Did she deserve to be at peace? If you watched both parts, like this video and subscribe. There are more stories coming, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to let go.